Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr. of www.stressfreenow.info.
Hi, this is Dr. Bob coming to you today from Nairobi, Kenya, in the airport on a layover. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today from a travel perspective is that there are three types of layovers in my experience. The first kind is when you have a connecting flight like I do here, and you have enough time to get to where you're going. And so I just flew out of JFK on a 14 and a half hour flight, which actually wasn't too bad because I had 3 meals on Kenya Airways. And so now the gap between when I got off the plane and my next flight is 3 hours, which is actually perfect because this way, when you go through security and you can use the restroom and get something to eat if you choose to, there is no sense of being harried and rushed. There were people on the security line that were behind me, which is the second type of layover, which is that they were flying through the airport literally because their flight was in 5 minutes and the connection time was too tight from where they had to go. And so I've had that experience flying through Chicago and flying through Atlanta where I missed my connection. Also, I missed my flight out of Miami because the security lines were so long. They moved us to another area. And then when we went through security, it was a mile and a half to the next to where my flight was taking off. So as I was about a half mile from from where I was going to catch my flight, I heard the announcement. It said last call for flights to New York. And so I never, ever take connecting flights inside the United States anymore. If it's not a non-flight stop flight, I either drive or I don't go because after missing 3 flights, I don't do that anymore. And so the last type of layover is actually for me a very enjoyable one. Several times I've had really actually there's two more types of layovers. There's a longer layover where, for example, I was in Doha in Qatar last year, and I had an 8 hour layover. And I went to use one of the lounges, even though I'm not a member. I think you can pay like $75 for the day and you can use the lounge and it's very comfortable. But when I got to the lounge in Doha in the airport, the lady said, the lounge is full, so come back in 6 hours. So I said, that's not going to work. And then I saw this little sign and it said something about a spa. So I was like, ooh. I said, oh, is there a spa in the airport? She said, yeah. And I said, where is it? And she said, one flight up. So that turned out to be the best part of my experience of being in on that layover because I was able to go to the spa and I got a 90-minute Balinese combined hot stone bamboo massage. I had for 90 minutes, and then I had an hour in the huge swimming pool size whirlpool by myself. And then the best part was that I had flown out of Washington, D.C. to Doha because Lufthansa Airlines had screwed me and they canceled all my flights. It took me 5 hours to get to JFK. And when I got to the entrance of JFK, there was a car that was on fire. So I couldn't even get into the airport. So when I finally got to the terminal, I parked my car in short-term parking. I was like 5 minutes late. And so the lady was very, very nasty. So whatever you do, don't take Lufthansa airline. And what I found out is that my experience wasn't unusual. Not only was the Lufthansa person nasty at the gate, later that year, in the summer of 2022, if you do the research, 130,000 passengers were delayed with canceled flights out of Frankfurt. And so imagine that 130,000 people. Why? Because the workers had gone on strike for the three airlines that are owned by Lufthansa. And so, as you can imagine, there was lost luggage. So imagine 130,000 people flying into an airport, flying into Brussels airport, flying into Frankfurt, and they couldn't get out of the airport, and for some people for 2 weeks. So whatever you do, I think they do Lufthansa, Brussels Air, and there's another airline that's affiliated with them. So I would never take them. So I lost $1,500 on my airfare because they canceled all my flights, and then I had to spend another $2,200 for my ticket. So I flew out of Washington. I drove to Washington D.C. from JFK, and then I flew out of Washington, D.C. to Doha, and then I went to the Maldives. And so, what I want to say to you, this is how I turned lemons into lemonade, because instead of a 12-day vacation, I had a 24-day vacation because I was really, really angry at how I was treated. And here's why. A gentleman walked up to the counter while I was trying to talk to the lady, and he pulled the rank and privilege. He wasn't even flying on a paid ticket. He was using his frequent flyer miles, and she gave him 100% courtesy, and she told me to go to the 800 number. So that's why I booked myself. I spent 24 days in the Maldives rather than 12 days. And on this trip, this is my second round the world trip, I'm going back to the Maldives because it's ridiculous out here that the top tenth of 1% is flying private, they don't even go through security. And so for regular people, they're not happy when we're traveling and without permission, as if we need permission to be able to take a vacation. So I'm on vacation, and I want you to go on vacation. So whatever dream destination you had, and remember, at the start of every year, or at the end of every year, actually, they do a survey in the United States, and they ask people what is their number one New Year's wish, and after the pandemic, 94% of people said their number one New Year's wish was to go travel to their dream destination. So I want you to think about that. Prior to the pandemic, only 74%, which is 3 out of 4 people, said that they wanted to go to their dream destination. But after being locked down for 2 years, people said, hey, I want to bust out. So whether it's traveling domestically or internationally, I want you to get your travel groove on. If you don't have your passport, you need to get your passport, do whatever it takes. If you want to drive, if you want to fly, you want to take the train, but get out there and have fun. A lot of people during the pandemic, you couldn't shake hands, you couldn't give grandma a hug, you couldn't give your auntie a kiss on the cheek. And so you have to remember that human beings are touch beings. So going over 2 years without being able to embrace someone, and recently I was in the Buenos Aires, and that was a huge mistake. That is not a place to go to as a tourist. But when I was standing in the airport waiting for my flight to get out of there, what I noticed is that at each place, whether it's in a restaurant or it was at the check-in counter, when the workers came in, they all kissed each other on the cheek. The men kissed each other on the cheek, the women kissed each other on the cheek, and whatever. So I said to them, I said, oh my gosh, do you realize if you did that in the United States, you would be arrested? I said, you can't go around the office kissing people on the cheek. I said, even though like you can imagine you might like to do that. And so they really didn't understand. I said, well, your culture is so different than what we experience in the United States. You can't even approach a woman and then think you could kiss her on the cheek, or a woman wouldn't, approach you at work and kiss you on the cheek. That would have a different meaning. That's like you're having an affair. And so they said, no, this is how our culture is. And so I noticed that's one of the really wonderful things about traveling is that you get to see that however you are living is not how other people are living, and it doesn't have to be. And the most amazing thing is to try different foods from around the world. And it is pretty amazing. And so one of the foods that I really fall in love with is from Panama. They're called carimañoles. It's yuca with ground beef, etc., and it's deep fried. It's one of the most delicious things I've ever tasted. And recently on a cruise, I had one of the best Mexican chicken and rice meals that was like out of this world. I literally sailed out the dining room. So whether it's taking a cruise, whether it's taking Amtrak, I want you to get out there and get your travel groove on. So this is Dr. Bob coming from Nairobi, Kenya, telling you to do what you already know, which is to take better care of yourself. And that is exactly what UB Blake said at his 100th birthday party. He said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And so that's what we want. We want longevity with quality, right? We don't want longevity and being decrepit. And so this is Dr. Bob from Stress Free Now podcast. And remember to smash that like button and subscribe to the Stress Free Now podcast series. Until next time, from Nairobi, Kenya, on a layover. Be safe and be well.